Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. I'm your host, Jasmine McTague, live from Jersey City, New Jersey. Now, details at this time. Here's what it's like living in the smallest apartment in New York. Whatever your expectations are, lower them. That's how Axel Weber starts his video tour of his apartment on social media. Axel is a brand new to New York City, but he already feeling right at home at all 100 square foot of it. Right next to the sink is a conveniently located kitchen, Axel said. The slightly less than luxurious apartment tour has racked up more than 20 million views on TikTok. He showed off his bunk bed style sleeping quarters. I have two beds, but only one me. Some nights I am a queen guy, some nights I'm a chillin' on the twin, Axel said in his video. Axel's bathroom is down the hall from the apartment and it's shared with other building residents. It's also a BYOTP. Least favorite things about the apartment would probably be the very thin walls. Very thin, Axel said. But the 22-year-old said he digs his new digs. I'm happy because where I was before, this was in a car, just living out of 2000 Volvo, Axel told ABC News. Does he dream of something nicer one day? I dream of a stove, that's what I dream of. A nice four burner, a gas range, maybe my own pot to cook pasta in, Axel said. You want to know what I'm cooking pasta in right now? A pan. That's a pan, a single burner stove. Sure, it's slightly less than the 100 square foot, but plenty of room for a sense of humor and incredibly positive attitude. Where I am now, regardless of how odd it may seem, certainly better than where I've been, Axel said. Axel is paying $1,200 a month in rent for an apartment. He said the only thing he misses more than having his own bathroom is his mom back in Georgia. And now to our next story of the hour. Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot had a funny response when former Cook County Circuit Court Clerk Dorothy Brown suggested Lightfoot run for governor someday. You might not like me if you wanted to send me to Springfield, Lightfoot said in a text obtained by the Tribune in a response to a series of open record requests. Lightfoot isn't the first mayor of Chicago who isn't a big fan of the state capitol, but dealing with Illinois' legislature and governor is a key part of the job that has at times been a challenge for the mayor. The Tribune obtained more than 2.5 years of Lightfoot's text messages with aldermen and high-ranking political leaders through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, which members of her staff failed to comply with until the state attorney general admonished them and the Tribune threatened a lawsuit. Earlier this month, who campaigned as a reformer aiming to unite the city, has sometimes resorted to name-calling and shaming of her perceived enemies as she governs the city. Text messages with the state's most powerful political leaders show the same combativeness that's been a hallmark of her dealings with the city council. In particular, Lightfoot has repeatedly clashed with Governor J.B. Pritzker and Senator President Don Harmon. Records show. Although Lightfoot and Pritzker have tried to put a positive spin on their relationship when asked about it by reporters, their dealings have been strained, which the text also reveals. And now to our next story of the hour. Highway 50 is open and I-80 is now partially open, but the snow has made for more major delays on each of those roadways for those trying to leave Tahoe region. Some gas stations in the region have run out of gasoline, and food is even harder to come by for some trying to get back into the Bay Area who's stuck. It's like really long right now, says Marcela Cardona, referring to traffic. Cardona zoomed with us as she sat in bumper to bumper traffic along the Highway 50 near South Lake Tahoe late Tuesday morning. I'm in this car and it's literally not moving, said Cardona, who is trying to get back to San Francisco. Her story is similar to that of so many others who are trying to leave the Tahoe region and moving at a matter of a feet per hour. We are probably going to be stranded. A lot of gas stations we went to were all out of gas. Chevron 76, said Emily Kabatsarov of Sacramento. And while Highway 50 was moving at times, the long backup due to accidents were extensive on Tuesday. This is something that Castro Valley Joseph de la Vega feared Monday. So he and his girlfriend left Reno by driving east and then south nearly all the way to Las Vegas through Bakersfield and eventually back to Castro Valley. A 15-hour, nearly 1,000-mile ride home that ended at 1:15 a.m. Tuesday. And on to the next story of the hour. A Houston police officer involved in a crash that killed a 75-year-old man has been relieved of duty pending the outcome of the investigation. The crash caught on surveillance video happened Sunday at noon on the 46,000 North Shepherd's Drive. Police say the HPD officer was driving a marked SUV unit northbound on North Shepherd when the man identified as Charles Payne turned left towards Thornton Road. Payne had been coming from southbound lane and was trying to cross the northbound lane of North Shepherd when the HPD unit slammed into his vehicle. Payne was transported to the hospital where he died. His family say that he had just left church when the crash happened. Payne was a father of 7 and had 13 grandchildren. The deadly wreck is being investigated by the HPD Vehicular Crimes and Internal Affairs Division, as well as Harris County District Attorney's Office. The officer was on duty at the time of the crash and was not responding to a call, HPD says. And now, a short break from our English news of Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. Here's the story of the hour. A war-born mother was mourned by nearly 200 family members and friends in Dorchester neighborhood where she grew up, as her boyfriend continues to be held without bail after she was found dead last week. Sherelle Pringle, 40, was found dead in a marsh along Route 107 in Sagos on December 21st. Her boyfriend, Bruce Mayaben, has been charged with larceny and obstruction of justice and is being held without bail. He has not been charged in the death. On Tuesday, family and friends gathered in Dorchester to remember Pringle as a go-getter who always affectionate and always smiling. I know she's smiling at the loved ones getting right now, said a lifelong friend, Donna Woods. She was a good-hearted person. She didn't deserve this. On to our next story of the hour. 2 people were killed and a third person was injured in a shooting Monday night at an apartment complex in Dallas, police said. It happened about 7:50 p.m. at the South Crest Apartments at 3736 Conway Street near Marvin D. Love Freeway and Interstate 35 East south of West Kest Boulevard. Officers found 2 people dead in the parking lot and a third person was taken to the hospital but is expected to be okay, police said. A sergeant at the scene told WFAA that several weapons were found on the scene. Police believe that the 2 people who were killed shot at each other, police said. One of them shot the third person who was injured and transported to the hospital. The motive and circumstances surrounding the murders are still under investigation. The 2 people who died did not have identification on them. The Dallas County Medical Examiner Office will work to identify them. The Dallas Police Department Homicide Unit is asking for the public's assistance regarding this murder and is encouraging anyone with information to contact Detective Theodore Gross. On to the next story of the hour. Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader and Nevada's longest-serving member of Congress, has died. He was 82. Reid died Tuesday peacefully and surrounded by friends following a courageous 4-year battle with pancreatic cancer. Landra Reid said of her husband in a statement, "Harry was a devout family man and deeply loyal friend." She said, "We are greatly appreciate the outpouring of support from so many over these past few years. We are especially grateful for the doctors and nurses that cared for him. Please know that meant the world to him." Funeral arrangements would be announced in the coming days, she said. The combative former boxer-turned-lawyer was widely acknowledged as one of the toughest dealmakers in Congress. A conservative Democrat in an increasingly polarized chamber reflects lawmakers of both parties with a brocade manner and this motto, "I would rather dance than fight, but I know how to fight." Over a 34-year career in Washington, Reid thrived on behind-the-scenes wrangling and kept the Senate controlled by his party through 2 presidents, Republican George W. Bush and Democrat Barack Obama. A crippling recession and the Republicans take over the House after 2010 elections. He retired in 2016 after an accident left him blind in one eye. Reid in May 2018 revealed he'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was undergoing treatment. Less than 2 weeks ago, officials say Reid's son, Roy Reid, marked the renaming of a busy Las Vegas airport as Harry Reid International Airport. Roy Reid is a former Clark County Commission's chairman and Democrat Nevada's gubernatorial candidate. Neither Henry nor Landra Reid attended the December 14th ceremony held at the facility that had been known since 1948 as McCarran International Airport. After a former U.S. Senator from Nevada, Pat McCarran, and today ranked as one of the 10 busiest airports in the U.S., the Clark County Commission voted unanimously last February to make the name change, and the Federal Aviation Administration began listing the new name on the aviation charts last June. Among many other projects, the Reids brought support to Nevada and a notable national nuclear waste repository plan for Yucca Mountain that, as Senate Majority Leader, he blocked. Reid pushed for development of the Terminal 3 International Arrivals Annex that opened in the airport in June of 2012. Now on to our next story. 2 teenagers and 1 man are in custody following a string of armed robberies Tuesday morning in the Twin Cities. The Ramsey County Sheriff's Office said the first robbery happened around 9:30 a.m. on the 700 block of Osceola Avenue in St. Paul. The victims reported that their black BMW SUV was blocked by 3 suspects, one of which was armed with a handgun. And the victim said that they had to pull their child from the vehicle as the carjackers sped off. The deputies searched for the SUV and found that it was allegedly involved in a recent robbery in Minneapolis. When deputies found the vehicle near Minneapolis-St. Paul's border, a 17-year-old boy got out of the back seat and ran. Deputies chased the teenager and arrested him near the Huntington Bank Stadium on the University of Minnesota campus. The sheriff's office said that the teen's criminal history includes weapon charges and aggravated robbery. While the foot chase happened, another armed robbery occurred nearby. The sheriff's office said that the suspect's description matched those of the earlier, around 1:30 p.m. The deputies learned that the suspect's vehicle was in North Minneapolis. With the help of the Hennepin County deputies and Minneapolis police, the Ramsey County deputies located the SUV and found the 2 suspects, both of whom led officers on a foot chase. Both were arrested. One of the suspects is a 19-year-old man and the other is a juvenile. Both suspects have criminal history that includes auto theft and carjacking. And they are also wanted in connection to officers who were hurt, and the sheriff officer said. The Ramsey County deputies who investigated the string of robberies Tuesdays were part of the carjacking and auto theft unit. The sheriff's office also acknowledged that the arrests were possible due to the collaborative efforts between several law enforcement agencies in the Twin Cities. And now a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned!
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. And now, the news at this time. A court in Moscow on Wednesday granted a request to shut down another prominent human rights organization amid a sweeping crackdown on Russian rights group, independent media, and opposition supporters. The Moscow City Court's decision to shut down the Memorial Human Rights Center came a day after Russia's Supreme Court revoked the legal status of its sister organization Memorial, a human rights group that drew international acclaim for its studies of political repression in the Soviet Union. Russian authorities previously declared both organizations as foreign agents, a designation that brings additional government scrutiny and carries strong pejorative connotations. Prosecutors petitioned to shut down the group last month, arguing that they had repeatedly violated regulations obliging them to identify themselves as foreign agents in all contents they produce. Memorial and Memorial Human Rights Center rejected the accusations as politically motivated. We've been saying from the start that the foreign agents law, and I'm doing the air quotations again, is not lawful and it's not to be amended, but only abolished because it was designed with the aim of strangling civil societies. Today we receive another proof of that. Alexander Cherkasov, board chairman of Memorial Human Rights Center, said Wednesday. The rulings to close them drew widespread public outrage, with crowds of support showing up at courthouses on Tuesday and Wednesday despite freezing weather. Both memorial organizations promised to appeal the ruling, revoking their legal status. In a statement Tuesday, Memorial vowed to find legitimate ways to continue our work. Several top U.S. and European officials condemned today's decision to shut down Memorial as an attack on Russia's civil society. Now to our next story of the hour. Desmond Tutu is being remembered for his passionate advocacy on behalf of the LGBTQ people, as well as his fight for racial justice. But the South African Archbishop campaign against homophobia had limited impact in the rest of Africa, where same-sex marriages remain illegal and most countries criminalize gay sex. Even within his own denomination, the Anglican Communion, there has been no continent-wide embrace of the LGBTQ rights. Leaders of Ghana Anglican Church, for example, have joined other religious leaders there in endorsing a bill that would impose prison sentence on people who identify as LGBTQ or supports that community. Before Tutu died on Sunday at the age of 90, most African religious leaders rejected his LGBTQ position, and those who agreed with him often were cautious, said Kenya-based researcher Yamani Wamari of the Outright Actions International, a global LGBTQ rights organization. Most of them are unwilling to offer their contra views due to the fear of reprisal and backlash of not conforming with African values. Wamari said via email, as long as religious leaders are unwilling to interpret the Bible from the lens of love of all, as Tutu did, homophobia and transphobia will remain a part of our lives. Homosexuality activity remains outlawed in more than 30 of the Africa's 54 countries. In a few, it is punishable by death. Many LGBTQ Africans are subject to stigma and abuse, facing unemployment, homelessness, estrangement from their families. Stephen Brown, a professor at the University of Ottawa School of Political Studies, described Tutu as a moral giant who held his convictions, including support of LGBTQ people, no matter how risky or unpopular it would be. For example, Tutu was mocked in 2013 by Robert Mugabe, then a repressive leader of Zimbabwe. Tutu was just stepped down because he supports gays, something that memorable comment about LGBTQ inclusion. I would not worship a God who is homophobic, he said. I would refuse to go to the homophobic heaven. Nor I would say, sorry, I would much rather go to the other place. South Africa is the only African country that has legalized same-sex marriage, and its constitution protects against anti-LGBTQ discrimination. Yet even then, violence against LGBTQ people remains common. In Cape Town, where Tutu was the Anglican archbishop, members of the LGBTQ community reacted to his death with tributes. On to our next story. Sarajevo, Bosnia, Herzegovina. Bosnia's rate of vaccination against the coronavirus is one of the lowest in Europe, but one population in the Balkan country has bucked the national trend: its prison inmates. Over 80% of the 2,000 men and women serving sentences in Bosnia's 13 prisons have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. That compares to a slightly over 27% of the nation as a whole, a rate that results from the lack of takers, not an absence of shots. Bosnia and most of the rest of the Balkans struggled at the beginning of the year to secure vaccine, but had a steady supply of jabs by late spring. While the public demand for shots quickly slowed, interest remained high inside correctional facilities, where authorities say getting vaccinated remains voluntary. The country's largest penal institution, the maximum security prison in the city of Zenica, is a case in point. Over 90% of the prison's inmates and over 60% of staff have received 2 shots after the initial drive to encourage vaccine uptake. While the overall vaccination rate among all prison employees in Bosnia so far has been lower than among the inmates, it is still more than twice as high than the rate in the general population. Kaharik said that getting vaccinated is voluntary for inmates at Zenica and Bosnia's other prisons. He thinks so many inmates admitted to a shot as a matter of convenience. Unlike the public at large, prisoners cannot bend or ignore anti-infection rules and must remain quarantined if they come into contact with an infected person. Prisoners who are eligible for weekend leaves also are tested before and after their trips outside. The spread of the virus appears to have generally been better controlled inside than outside Bosnian prisons. Since the start of the pandemic, no major prison outbreaks have been reported. Many members of my family got infected, including my mother, so I think that masking up and getting vaccinated is the way to go. Faharo Kariman, an inmate in Zenica, said. In the early days of the pandemic, when most of the world faced shortages of personal protective equipment, Zenica prisoners were put to work sewing face masks, part of their prison work program. The prison produced over 10,000 masks, primarily for its use, but also for the Justice Ministry to distribute to other correctional facilities, Kaharek said. The program has continued among with the pandemic. In the past, Zenica Prison was notorious for its poor human rights records, but substantial reform were made in the decade it had been under regular monitoring relevant European and Bosnian human rights bodies and officials. On to our next story. Greece health minister said Wednesday that music will be banned at all commercial venues for New Year's celebration as part of new restrictions announced in a response to the surge of COVID-19 infections fueled by the Omicron variant. The restriction, originally planned to take effect on January 3rd, will start early Thursday after the daily numbers of infections rocketed to nearly 22,000 on Tuesday, more than double the record number reported the previous day. Omicron is now the dominant variant in terms of new infections, Health Minister Thanos Pavlaris said during a live stream briefing. Much about the Omicron remains unknown, including whether it causes more or less severe illness. Included in Greece's measures are the mandatory use of high protection masks at supermarkets and on public transports, schedule changes and additional work from home orders from the government employees, and strict capacity limits at sporting venues. Entertainment venues will close at midnight starting Thursday, but they will be allowed to stay open until 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve. And now a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. And now, the story of the hour. A vocal pro-democracy website in Hong Kong shut down Wednesday after police raided its office and arrested 6 current and former editors and board members in a continuing crackdown on dissent in a semi-autonomous Chinese city. Stan News said in a statement that its website and social media are no longer being updated and will be taken down. It said all employees have been dismissed. The outlet was one of the last remaining openly critical voices in Hong Kong following the shuttering of the Apple Daily newspaper, which closed after its publisher, Jimmy Lai, and its top editor were arrested and its assets frozen. Police raided Stan's news office earlier in the day after arresting the 6, including popular singer and activist Dennis Ho, a former board member, on charge of conspiracy to publish a seditious publication. More than 200 officers were involved in the search, police said. They had a warrant to seize relevant journalistic materials under the national security law enacted last year. The 6 were arrested under the crime ordinances that dated from Hong Kong's days as a British colony before 1997, when it was returned to China. Those convicted could face up to 2 years in prison and a fine up to 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. Police did not identify who was arrested, but Hong Kong's South China Morning Post newspaper reported there were one current and one former editor of Stan's News and four former board members, including Ho, and former lawmaker Margaret Nang. A Facebook post earlier Wednesday morning on Ho's account confirmed that she was being arrested. Subsequent message posted on her behalf said she was okay and urged friends and supporters not to worry about her. That post drew nearly 40,000 likes and 2,700 comments, mostly from supporters. Early Wednesday, France News posted a video on Facebook of a police officer at the home of the deputy editor, Ransan Chan. Chan, who is also chair of Hong Kong Journalists Association, was taken away for questioning. The organization confirms in a statement, Chan was later released, told media police seized his electronic devices, bank cards, and press cards. The arrest comes as authorities crack down on dissent in the semi-autonomous Chinese city. Hong Kong's police previously raided the office of the new defunct Apple Daily newspaper, seizing boxes of materials and computers, hard drives to assess their investigation, and freezing millions in assets that later forced the newspaper to cease operations. Police charged the Apple Daily Lei, who is already jailed on other charges, with sedition on Tuesday. We are not targeting reporters. We are not targeting the media. We're just targeting national security offenses, said Lee Kawan-Hwa, senior superintendent of the Police National Security Department. If you only report, I don't think it's a problem. On to our next story of the hour. Many well-off Lebanese who escaped their country's economic tailspin for a new life in a nearby island nation of Cyprus say the transition has been a whirlwind of emotions. They are grateful they did not have to return human smugglers or embarked on a risky Mediterranean crossing to reach European shores. But they also feel guilty for leaving families and friends behind to struggle with Lebanon's unprecedented crisis, a failing economy, political uncertainty, and social upheaval. The feelings are intense for Celine El-Bacha, an architect who moved with her family of four to the Mediterranean island nation in August 2020, and Nadine Kalakeshi Ma-Lafou, who arrived with her husband and two children 4 months ago. They're among more than 12,000 Lebanese who have left their homelands in the past 2 years to Cyprus, less than a 15-minute flight from Beirut, enrolling their children in schools, setting up businesses, and snapping up apartments on the island. We are fortunate to be able to come, Malaf said. We're doing our best here as a Lebanese community to help our families, our friends back at home. So it's not like we just moved and we turned our backs and we're not looking back. Thousands of Lebanese, including teachers, doctors, and nurses, have left the country amid a devastating economic crisis that has thrown two-thirds of the country's population into poverty since October 2019. That brain drain accelerated after the massive explosion at Beirut's port last year, when a stockpile of improperly stored ammunition, nitrates detonated, killing at least 216 people and destroying several residential areas. On to our next story. China is calling on the United States, to protect a Chinese space station and its 3 crew after Beijing complained that satellites launched by Elon Musk's SpaceX nearly struck the station. A foreign ministry spokesperson accused Washington on Tuesday of ignoring its treaty obligation to protect the safety of the Tiangong Nation three-members crew following the July 1st and October 21st incident. The Tiangong performed invasive maneuvers to prevent a potential collision with Starlink satellites launched by Space Exploration Technologies Corp. The government said on December 6 complaints to the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. The United States should take immediate measures to prevent such incidents from happening again, said the spokesman of Zhao Lingjian. Zhao accused Washington of failing to carry out its obligations to protect the safety of astronauts under the 1967 Treaty on the Peaceful Use of Space. The first model of the Tiangong was launched in April. Its first crew returned to Earth in September following a 90-day mission. The second crew of the two men, one woman, arrived October 16th for a 6-month mission. And on to our final story of the hour. A lawsuit by an American who claims Prince Andrew sexually abused her when she was 17 might have to be thrown out because she no longer lives in the U.S., lawyers of the prince said in a court filing Tuesday. Attorneys Andrew Bitterler and Melissa Lennar wrote that they recently discovered Virginia Gouffier has lived in Australia all but 2 of the 19 years and cannot claim she's a resident of Colorado, where she hasn't lived since 2019. In August lawsuit, Virginia Gouffier claimed that Prince abused her on multiple occasions in 2001. The Prince's lawyers in October asked Judge Lewis A. Kaplan to throw out the lawsuit, saying the Prince never sexually abused or assaulted Gouffier, and they believe she sued Andrew to achieve another payday at his expense and at the expense of those closest to him. The lawyers acknowledge that Gouffier may well be a victim of sexual abuse by financier Jeffrey Epstein, who killed himself in 2019 while awaiting a sex trafficking trial. Last month, Kaplan said a trial in Gouffier's lawsuit against the prince could occur between September and December 2022. But the prince's lawyers say that information about Gouffier's residence should result in the suspension of any further progress in the lawsuit towards the trial, which would include depositions of Andrew and Gouffier until the issue is settled as to whether her foreign residence disqualifies her from suing Andrew in the U.S. They asked the judge to order Gouffier to respond a written legal request about her residency and submit to a 2-hour disposition on the issue. An attorney for Gouffier, Sigrid McCrawley, called the request to toss out the case just another in the series of tired attempts by Prince Andrew to duck and dodge the legal merits of the case of Virginia Gouffier has brought against him. All parties in litigations are subjected to discovery, and the Prince Andrew is no exception. The prince's attorney wrote that Gouffier has an Australian driver's license and was living in a $1.9 million home in Perth, Western Australia, where she's been raising 3 children with her husband, who is Australian. And this was in the daily local news update of Millennium News 24/7. Log in to get the latest news. All of our social networking sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is Millennium News 24. Also, our YouTube channel is News Channel M24. Viewers now on both network broadcasting Android and iOS devices, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, also all smart TV platforms. Please enjoy our entertainment and latest news and views. Our Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA Android, and Millennium News Google, www.millenniumtv24.com. Stay with Millennium News 24 and thank you for watching.